it in all the channels.
All the channels.
All the channels.
Is that where we start now?
I feel like we should tell everyone, man, they just missed another dynamic episode of software-defined talk scheduling, where no one wants to be involved, yet everyone has to be involved. And maybe that'll be a topic we get to. Is maybe the whole the ChatGPT. When can it just figure this shit out for us? It's like it's too complicated. A constant topic. The calendaring conversation will continue in software-defined talk through at least 2023, if not longer.
I want to get involved. You just do such a good job, Brandon, that I'm too relaxed. You know, I gotta
that's like, I don't know. Is that one of those like? Is that
I
like
think
psychological warfare? Like
they call that
gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
You do such a better job than I would.
Did I use gaslighting correctly? I feel like I struggle with that word, but I think that was some gaslighting.
Yeah,
as the kids say.
Is that the word of the year last year, and this year it's goblin mode?
Oh, I like that goblin mode. Now that one I totally get. I still I don't know, gaslighting.
It's 2 words and not a good word.
It's not a good word, or it's just 2 words.
Dumb.
But, I like that one. I guess.
Damn.
Actually...
Australia has changed you, Matt Ray.
Well, yeah. I'm not going to argue that.
All right. Well, I don't know. KJ, can you see the streaming chat? I was trying to I don't want to stream from the studio. I just want to see the existing stream.
I see what you're saying.
I just want to manage the comments just because the spam.
Yeah, I don't have access to that account.
Yeah.
You should add me and then I will. But no, I don't have that.
All right. Well, I guess it'll just be, I don't want to delete. No, I don't want to do that. Well, the comments will just be unmoderated in YouTube. That, what could go wrong?
Nothing.
All right. Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out if this Mastodon thing is for me. Is that going to work? I have a feeling that I don't fit into that community.
It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. All right,
I think it's fun to read. I just don't know if I
think you just I don't know. I keep meaning to create a software-defined talk thing in it, and it's just like I think it's just learning curve. Not learning curve. I guess it's just I don't know, doing curve. Like it's like I keep meaning to be like, don't go to Twitter, go to Mastodon, right? But it's I don't know. It just feels like it's hard to like retrain the muscles. The muscle memory is just.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Well, for me, it's like the app's just a different experience, and so you kind of have to, get into. I'm not used to using things in browser tabs.
Yeah, I think I'm just too old for this shit.
Maybe the goal is just to get off of it all.
Yeah, that's always my goal. I mean, speaking of, Cormac McCarthy came out with a new book, so I'll see. Maybe I should check in on that. See how.
Is that your early Christmas present to yourself?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Any big plans for personal gifts?
No, we had Santa Claus here, and Kim bought me gifts, and I realized I didn't get her any gifts, which is as she said, fine, but like,
may want to check that.
Got to get gifts. I tried to ask that chat thing what gifts my wife wanted, and it said it doesn't have access to her email. What I should do? Maybe I should just ask.
Does it need a social security number?
I love it. It immediately started hacking her email. That's great.
Yeah, it was like I'm just a machine learning thing. I don't have access to personal data.
Yeah, the kind of the default like I can't answer your question message.
Yeah. It was good though. It at the end it was like, but you could try asking her, which is like, God damn it! Of course I could try that. Yeah.
All right, we go with these. I guess I picked out 3 or 4 things here. So I think there's some interesting.
I think
you wrote a lot about ChatGPT, so I think that's a good. I think we got stuff there. I did watch Werner's keynote, so I had some thoughts on that and event management. So I can like lead that one off.
We should start with that one. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and then I thought there's always a good survey, right? Datadog had some stuff there, so if we want to like. Delve into that, and then I don't know, changes at Salesforce, which are not necessarily something we talk about, but like I don't know, I had some thoughts on like Stuart Butterfield and him stepping down, so we can talk about Slack and then Teams has come out with a public version, so I'm sure we have some thoughts on that.
Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, So that's
wow.
one of the articles there. So
Maybe
I don't know.
we should be using that.
Yeah, that's.
No.
I thought we could talk about that. So
Well, maybe Stuart Butterfield will finally start that game company he's been trying to start.
yeah, I made the same exact.
No,
same
come on,
exact
that was original.
joke. No, I like it. That's. But I think we all need to make it, right? And is email dead? Right? Wasn't that the whole thing? It's like, could we comment? Did it die? Like, did his resignation email in Salesforce go out via Slack or via email? That would be a funny thing, man.
Or Chatter.
Or Chatter. That's even better.
Or I think it doesn't Salesforce have something called Quip now? Every time I log in at Salesforce, there's a banner that I'm one step closer.
All right, I don't know. That's what I put on there. Anything, but I'm up for anything, whatever you guys want.
No, that's good. Great.
Yeah, it's been kind of a quiet week, but never stopped us.
Well, we have 111 subscribers on our YouTubes.
Oh, I'm pretty wrong.
You should log in and see if you can do the community posts. There's like this little weird blog thing in there, but you can actually post things in there. That might be fun to start posting stuff in.
All right, I'll have to try it. I don't know. Let me know. It should be. I think I set it up under all of us. So if it's not in the software defined talk.
Well, no, there's a way you can actually add accounts. Well, I assume like you can actually like add accounts to it if it's a brand account. But
all right, I'll
that's how I get access to work YouTube stuff.
Well, one of you could try to delete my message in YouTube and see if you get like that kind of moderation.
No, I would know if I was a manager because I would have gotten an email and it would show up in my Switch account thing and blah blah blah.
Okay.
I think. Whatever. I think I would know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Again, it's never stopped us before.
What was that? Oh yeah, I know what I was going to talk about.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hold on. I guess I'm not ready. Let's go up here. Where? Oh, okay,
Last bite of breakfast. Make it count.
All right. Is that it? Oh wait, no problem. Yep. Oh yeah. I wish I had some coffee.
A little late for coffee, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. Maybe decaf. All right. Well, I want to read a little haiku. We can talk about the whole, my infatuation with the chat AI thing maybe in a little bit. But I had a topic I want to talk about, and I'm going to open it up with a haiku that I ask it to write. It goes like this. Ranch dressing divine, before the Big Bang, it was eternal condiment. And I think this is a way of opening up. I've been thinking about condiments a lot recently. And, one of the first things an American discovers when they go abroad, especially to Europe, is that there is a whole other world of condiments you previously didn't have access to. And I think the one that perhaps is the classic one is like the curry ketchup or something, right? But there's just so many other things. It's innumerable. And the thing that may blow Americans' minds is there's like at least 3 different types of mayonnaise, right? Multiple
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, my question to you, Matt Ray, was what are some Australian condiments that we may not be aware of?
Well, there are some folks who've been good boys and girls back in the States who are going to be getting some chicken salt for Christmas.
Oh, we've talked about this before.
I think, if you shop around and like the deepest, darkest parts of Fiesta, you can probably find it. But it's a mixture of spices and salt that they put on French fries. There's no actual chicken in it. Well, usually not. Some MSG. And it's like a savory salt that they put on fries, especially, and fried chicken. A lot of different people, a lot of different brands and stuff. And so we might be importing some of that into the States for, stockings and whatnot.
Now, how about things that you squeeze out of a bottle? That's what I'm interested in.
Out of bottles.
You got your ketchup, you got your mayonnaise, you got your mustard. That's
well,
maybe if you're highly innovative, you've got like a bottle of relish that's got a wide enough hole that you can squeeze that out. But that's kind of like, that's it for American condiments. We're done.
So this definitely relates back to the Australia being about 5 years behind the US in technology things. Squeeze bottle technology, a lot of the obviously, ketchup and mustard were already there, but it showed up for other things maybe 2-3 years ago.
Really?
I mean, you're like, oh, of course you have that. And like, no. And then all of a sudden, like now there's squeezable mayo. I don't know if I've seen the squeezable relish here, but
now hold on. Before the squeezable mayo, you're telling me that you had to like do the whole knife in a jar situation?
You know it.
Wow.
That's old school right there. Very old school.
Has this might be we might need to take this to the software defined ventures. Has anyone thought of squeezable peanut butter? I feel
Yes.
like that could work.
No, I don't feel like that would work. I think that would.
Squeezable peanut butter.
Where do you come down? Because doesn't peanut butter have to be refrigerated? Although this could be an issue. This could be a family by family decision.
No, you don't have to refrigerate it.
But I don't want to hate on people who like cold impossible to spread peanut butter. That's their choice.
They have squeezable pizza sauce. So if you're making
I'm all in on
pizza
that.
bagels,
Sounds great.
Now this I feels like represents the Australian life cycle.
No, hold on. I want to represent.
They don't have that
for the U.S. Cote.
I don't think so.
I want to throw something out. I want to see.
U.S. has everything.
Both of your opinion here. Sriracha. Has that crossed over?
Oh,
I feel like in the U.S.
sure.
it's crossed over to just general
multiple brands. Multiple brands.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like generalized condiment at this point. Although,
and here, I mean, maybe I wasn't shopping the right section of the grocery store. They have squeezable aioli, which is fancy mayo.
Yeah.
We have hoisin sauce in a squeezable thing. If you're doing the Vietnamese foods.
I was thinking more like the Rick and Morty chicken nugget situation.
we have squeezable chili mayo.
Okay, see, this is good. How about, do you have some sort of like, what they don't have over here, notably, is the eternal condiment, ranch dressing. I don't think it really like exists here. There's some things that look like ranch dressing, and then you try it and you're like, that is not ranch dressing.
They don't just have like Newman's Own.
Oh, they don't. No, there's no Newmans.
Oh, see that's crossover here. So we have plenty of that. So we get we don't have many choices, but they carry a lot of those products. So
maybe Paul Newman offended the Low Countries at some point, and was just like this product's not out there.
Yeah, he was known for being offensive.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think Australia might have like more squeezable condiments than your traditional American stuff. I mean, and I wanted to amend the sriracha stuff. Like, I don't think they sell name brand sriracha in the common grocery stores around here. You have to go to like the Asian market to get it.
Well, everybody has like the original, right?
Well, not like the one with the rooster on it. I don't know if no. I think there's like rip-off ones that'll be like a red bottle with a green top.
He didn't copyright it or whatever. So he's just
really?
like, my sauce is the best. Everyone will take it. There was one of those Atlantic articles or something where you read about it and you're like, I just spent 15 minutes reading about sriracha, and the guy built an empire all by himself, and he was like, everyone should enjoy my sauce.
I think it's one of these like sneaky huge businesses. Like when you like read about it, you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. It's like
I'm pretty sure he's the wealthiest person in Southeast Asia.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, well, here, I mean, it's definitely crossed over. I mean, in the U.S., it's like just regular. It's right there on the HEB, right? I mean, there's like a whole aisle of it, right?
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, remember, it's been too long since I've been to HEB. They got a whole row of squeezable condiments.
Oh yeah.
So I think what we need to do is we need to call up our friend Paul Ford and be like, you need to write the definitive, like 20,000 word essay on sriracha sauce. Like, you can talk for about 5,000 words about computers, but mostly about the sauce. And this would be the kind of thing like, if
I have to go find that article. Yeah.
If we were like some big Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone editor, we'd be like,
was Vanity Fair.
I don't know. I feel like
I'm going to give you some travel budget to go over there.
It should get the full like This American Life treatment or something, like like the whole story of it. Be like, and they'd start like somewhere. I don't even know which country, but they'd have that music play, and they come on. It's like here I am in Southeast Asia, the land of such and such, and I'm about to meet the richest person in the world. And then it just go off right from there. And it'd be an entire hour. Ira Glass would show up in and out, right? It'd be perfect. It'd be
Yeah, we
great.
could
That
talk.
episode would do great.
We could talk about Gopher and things like that. Really rock it. Well, speaking of gophers and the Gopher protocol. Now, I listened to the recap of Amazon reInvent, and I think the Warner Vogel's, I'll say it American style, keynote came out. And that's like the CTO one, the future looking one, and it looks. I didn't see it, so I'm looking forward to the recap. But it looks like it was about the dream of like an event-based reality. That the architecture that we're going to have, everything is going to be event-driven, which I don't know. But what was going on in that keynote?
Yeah, well, I thought it was good. It was sort of, we had not watched it by the time we recorded last week. So I thought it was, it sort of hit the tone of a good CTO keynote in the sense it was, kind of like a little bit of new stuff, but a lot of inspiration. And I thought it was good. Like I thought I think he did a good job. He had like a little Matrix kind of intro with a video. I thought it was well played, right? Now that's something that's been done a lot, but I thought that was really good. But the center piece of it was really, I mean, I guess ultimately behind the announcement was behind the keynote, Amazon announces, I guess, Event Bridge pipes. But for the most part, he gave kind of the speech I think a lot of us have seen before. It's like the world is asynchronous, right? And the real world is asynchronous. And there's lots of examples of that, right? About like, and he kind of did a little bit, it was kind of long, but he kind of showed like, here's what it would be like if you made French fries synchronously, like you made one fry at a time and you assembled a meal. And it was kind of funny to watch that whole thing. So I think we've all heard that a lot. And I think his whole, and it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, is it just that I'm older and I've seen a lot of these? It's like every podcast is someone's first podcast, or it's like every horror movie is someone's first horror movie. So I feel like we have seen this quite a bit, right? So that part was sort of redundant, but I think he was making that the whole case of like, hey, everything should be built around events. And then he kind of went through Amazon's history about starting with the monolith and then doing service-oriented architectures. If we all remember that, SOA from the day, and then moving into microservices, and then kind of moving into event-based stuff, all kind of talking about the same ideas. Like, hey, everything should be around events. And I think it's a pitch we've all heard before. So my question comes back to, the idea is great. So as an aspirational statement, right? Like, I wish you just worked at a company where it's like, yeah, like think of it as like all the software publishes its events into some well-known format, and everyone can kind of publish and subscribe. And if you're a developer, an application developer, you just show up and you just start subscribing to topics you're interested in, and you can start adding value day one, some new business function, right? So a pitch that's been out there, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 years. Like I was maybe even going back to MQ series and like before that kind of stuff. But the reality is that like it never actually comes to fruition. At least, I don't know. It doesn't ever feel like it ever actually happens. So, I mean, maybe Matt, get your take because you spend a lot of time in serverless as well. It's like, is it a vision that is ultimately just inspirational? They'll never realize it, or is technology just not evolved to a point that actually makes it possible?
I think it's an aspirational architectural pattern that is worth striving for. I mean, if you can put everything, if the idea is you have a centralized bus, if you will, where you put things on the bus and whoever wants it pulls it off, and that allows you to identify the bottlenecks in your process or switch pieces out. Where everybody knows that this is the lingual, this is the common path that everything is going along, and it's an architectural pattern, but whether or not everyone adheres to it, usually everything's just kind of a bunch of grown-up scripts. Like this, and the output goes into here, and publish a container, and we release on Tuesdays. But I think with event driven, it's more like, well, stuff is coming in here and we're going to push it to a central queue or, bus, and subscribe to, and pull things off as they come. And, oh, now we're going to add, now this person's interested and they're going to listen for them too, or, whatever. But it's really just a pattern that most shops don't identify. I don't think there's a lot of architecture to a lot of organizations.
Oh,
and I
boy,
think maybe that's where it
you
comes
went up
down
the
to.
abstraction stack there really quickly. That's yeah. So did other than the French fries, were there like examples of event-based architectures and applications?
Well, I think there was just kind of a lot of like the straw man kind of examples of like, here's why the world is based on events. And that's the part like, maybe, I don't know, we needed convincing. I guess the idea going forward, right? And I think you talked about the Amazon story that, we've covered a bunch on this show. It's like, at the end, right? The idea of two pizza teams and things being its own services and like that being one of the reasons Amazon's successful. So we talked about that. But I kind of back to what you're saying before, man. I guess in the end, I feel like maybe this pattern can only ever really be realized in like a pretty confined application. You know what I'm saying? The idea that like you would walk into one corporation, because I think this is the idea we'd all like to. It's like you walk into a company and everything is already event based, and you can just like I said before, you can kind of just immediately see the events and start acting on it. But really, reality is like you're working in some application, and maybe within that application or even the subsystems, that smaller team agrees like, yeah, we will use events. And some things have probably happened along the way. Like they built an application, they had some success with it. It got to the point they needed to re-architect it. So they kind of had some runway to build in the event-based system, but it's only going to really exist within like maybe the order entry system or in like one smaller set of domain inside of much larger applications. The idea that like, I don't even know if it's even like, I shouldn't even say it's aspirational. It's like the idea that to your point, what you said before, like organizations just don't think like this. The idea that like you could just go into like the world's largest bank and be like, yeah, everything's just event-based. Seems like, I don't know. It feels like that's kind of impossible. Like we'll never get there.
I mean, as you start to decouple systems, it's kind of the natural. Well, nothing's natural about any of this, but it's a logical place to start adding, this buffering layer where you can be like, hey, instead of having system A talk to system B, we put this man in the middle, if you will, where A publishes and B receives, and later on, C is interested too, or B was slow, so we replaced it. And but everything was, we knew that API, we knew what that contract looked like, we knew what we were pulling, so we didn't have to, these systems weren't tightly coupled. And that's everything Amazon being API driven, and it allows you to look for the business value in your code and get rid of a lot of that heavy lifting glue code that now we got to parse the WSDL, blah blah blah. It's like, look, if we all just push to a common place, pull off of it, agree on some formats, that's always been a software dream, right?
I guess that's the whole thing. It's like, is it reliable? Because think about like the idea of like, okay, we have an important application, like a business application, we're doing that. But like take any corporation and be like, well, what about like HR? Like maybe the HR system should just start publishing events like new person got hired today, and then everyone can just listen for that. And then like the benefits people was, okay, send them an email, right? And the idea is like, it just seems like it never like transcends to like the entire business. It's just like one system can do it, right? But like, you can't get beyond, like you can't get outside of it. So it's like, and maybe what you're saying is just kind of is where it ends up. It's like, yes, a localized, fairly complicated application can use event-based architectures and probably will work. Getting beyond that, the idea that it would integrate into a larger system, probably never going to happen.
But maybe that larger system is just like Slack, so what you want is your systems emitting events of interest. And, as the HR example, like, hey, we've got a new person. We're going to spit out, a welcome email or, a notification, and that kicks off a workflow that sends a welcome email and announces the person to the company, whatever. But as you're writing that initial HR onboarding thing, you're like, I don't know, here's an event, maybe somebody will consume it. And then later on, people are like, Hip Chat's the bomb, and we all rolled into it. And then later on, they're like, oh, actually, we're going to use Slack. And, that event didn't have to change. They just consume it in a different location. And so that's kind of the goal is, your applications, and this goes into like open telemetry and, all the logging standards and monitoring standards. Like everybody's just like, look, don't make me think how A talks to B. Let me just write to a standard, an event, a web event. And, people will consume it if they care.
Right. No, I agree.
They don't care today.
And I guess maybe that's in the end, that's kind of the missing link in all these keynotes. It's like, yes, what you said is right. Like Yes, if we ever all admitted these events, it would be great. People could do other things with it. It's like, well, how are we ever going to get everyone to start emitting these events in a well-known place? Like, who's bootstrapping the investment
Well,
to make it happen?
Amazon's bootstrapping it, right?
Right.
All AWS services are chatty and are going to be emitting all sorts of events. And when you decide, hey, I sure would like to know what's happening. Can I have an event every time somebody hits an S3 bucket?
Yeah, and maybe that's the pitch. Like, I guess if you use Amazon and things like that, I guess it's just sort of like to me, I guess what I'm more interested in at this point is like, just take a large enterprise of any type. It's like, can they go from where they are today to an event-based system? Should they even try? Like, will it ever actually get there? Or is it just like, yeah, okay, it's another thing, but got a bunch of VMs, a bunch of VMs I got to run and a bunch of other stuff I got to run. And like, yeah, just tell the person in HR to like send an email. And then eventually the new employee will just email in like, oh, I'm new today. And then people are like, oh, that's the event, right? The event is an email. Someone's like, hey, I'm new. What should I do? And I don't know. Like, there's just some kind of missing glue there to like make it happen to me.
Yeah, and didn't like I only read a summary, but didn't he actually mention glue several times? That like all the it's all this glue code that's annoying and integrating stuff together. And it seems like, I mean, as you're saying, Matt Ray, it seems like that's the main problem. Is like, well, if we all used the same like middleware and platforms instead of having to integrate together all this other stuff that's incompatible, then it'd be awesome. Like that would be
well, somebody's got to do it, right?
And which is not to dismiss the idea. I think to the point of what we're saying, that's exactly like every time the event architecture thing comes up, it's usually driven by like there's some new way to solve that problem of like not everyone uses the same thing, right? I mean, if I remember the description of object-oriented programming, it was that you had objects that sent events to each other. Or something like that. So like we've always been going after this, but whatever. Again, it's a good idea, but it does make me think like, I don't have a computer science degree, but there must be like, maybe someone's done this without like funny Greek characters so I could actually read it, but there must be only like 5 types of program architectures, right? Like there can't be that many, right? And it would seem like that's the thing that like is often missing whether it's like serverless discussion or event-based thing is like I think it, when I watch myself react to them, I always am careful to like not react as like, I don't think anyone's proposing that this is the one way to do software. It's just like some tool to do it. But I don't know. Maybe that is what's being proposed. Maybe there's only like 2, if not 1 way, like architecture that you should be doing, and everything else. Maybe it's like the DevOps Generation 1 sort of dichotomy where like everything is either pure and fantastic and written in a whatever that word was, not procedural, or it's some crappy script code, right? And maybe we're always just trying to escape from crappy script code. Because your HLR example is like, I guess as long as you had some long-running processes monitoring for something, then like you could just fire a bunch of events off. I mean, you're going to have some timer that's like fire off a reminder event that they only have 24 hours to make their healthcare selections. Like there's going to need to be some little things there. But I mean, there must be something like an event running in a circle until the clock reads a certain like time that you would use. And then I guess like you look at like a Twitter architecture, that's could totally be, it probably is a lot of event stuff. On the other hand, streaming this video that we're doing is probably not an event architecture. Like the idea
it totally is. Right.
But like at some point when you have to like encode the video and figure out like all of that stuff and then sync up the audio and send that out, like is that event based? I mean, I think
probably like when this recording stops, it kicks off an event to their
processing for the audio.
Yeah, I mean,
but I mean the actual like video, like right now when we're streaming this video, like there's probably like, I don't know if like, would that be an event architecture, or is it just like there's a process running that's like sucking in this video, encoding it to one stream, and then through out another end, sticking it on YouTube or whatever?
It,
Or is
it actually, yeah.
does it like encode
it's
the
a
video
stream, right?
and then file it on a queue somewhere that someone's listening to, and then they take those chunks and they send it off
Yes.
somewhere? So if that's the proposal, that would be fascinating. That like all architectures are event-based architectures.
Well, I think that's
it's
what people
nothing else.
say, right?
You're
That's
talking
the
queue versus streaming,
yeah.
right?
Well, that's the whole thing that people, and I guess that's what Werner was trying to say is like, okay, you can make everything event-based, right? But like putting aside the streaming example, it's just sort of like what it really happens, like you start building an application, people are like order application, right? And at the start, like they could say like, you know what, I'll just make everything event-based from the very first second, and that's how we'll do the integration. But I think that generally never happens. It starts like, okay, the event system starts, the order system starts. It's like, I'll do I'll get the order information, and then it calls. It's like, okay, now it needs to go to the like, quote unquote fulfillment, and it calls it directly, right? And that's where you start to get the coupling. And then over time, people are like, oh, well, maybe that should be event-based, right? But like, it's not I guess it is a first principle questions, but it is not a natural thing people do when they build applications, right? Only after the fact and things get big enough do they think to themselves like, oh, all of this could be event-based. But by then, you're looking at a lot of glue code, and you're looking at a fairly large organization, and you're looking at a lot of ingrained systems. So you have to go back and start retrofitting, like a la the Amazon example. So that's just why I'm always like, there's something stuck here, right? There's this idea that like people don't do it as a natural response to a problem. And then there's, in this case, the latest example is like, okay, AWS wants you to use event bridge pipes, right? Which is just, it's probably great, probably a good solution. It's just like a lot of the other ones. It's like, but there's something in the middle there that's sort of like people don't see the value to like, let me do this up front, right? They just, they wait, and they end up with the same problem over and over.
I guess the interesting thought exercise would be like, so whenever you submit you could always use WordPress. Whenever you submit a post to WordPress, that's like that's probably a totally driven event-based thing. But at which point when submitting it, are there not events being used? Like there's an actual PHP code that's just like passing around little bits and generating stuff. And then that would be the fun distinction is like now there are no events. You're just like inside of whatever the kids call it nowadays, a method, and you have variables, and you're passing these variables on in a serial string to each other. And like knowing, because in theory, every line of code could like create an event and stick it on a queue somewhere, and then some other line of code could set up whatever filters to know that like, when Jerry creates this event, now Chris comes and takes that event. And like, every line of code could be doing that. But at some point you've got to be like, no, that's absurd. Like, is that 50 lines or is it 5 code points? Like when do you not pass events back and forth?
I mean, yeah. You're going to start talking about your Xeon processor. It's got a bunch of threads.
But I think you're looking at the end. Like, I think you're sort of like maybe one logical extreme is like, hey, forget before we even get there. Let's just make it more simple. It's just like, hey, if you're writing any piece of code and you're just like, I think there's some events in here that I don't necessarily know what people are going to want them for, but I think they're interesting. I'm just going to, while I'm doing the work that I know I need to do, I will also publish them to a well-known format. Like, just start there. Like, I don't think most people are even doing that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think it's back to what you were raising, Matt. Is it's just like, well, we're all doing event programming. There's just like 3,000 ways to do it. And so that creates a problem for the event dream. Like what you would really like is when there's a new hire, when the new hire comes to the desk, there's a badge printed out for them, and it gives them access to everything instead of having to file a ticket or something like. And that'd be great. Maybe you got to get your physical security systems to integrate with Workday or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is really just like Werner's opportunity each year to like remind people that, you're not really, try harder, try harder. And, there's a lot of books about architecture and design patterns. The Gang of Four book is probably the grandfather, and like, just pull out a chapter and like this year, we're going to talk about event-driven stuff. And that's how Amazon does it. You should do it. Use our product, like and subscribe.
Yeah. No, I think that's maybe the question back for his next keynote next year is like, I don't know. This is where I just literally don't. I wish I knew more about the audience, but it's like we know about this, or many of us watching, we know about this. It just turns out actually getting it implemented, there are just like a million challenges. And if you have any answers on how to do that, other than Jeff Bezos writing a memo and like a, basically issuing like a command, like everything shall be event based. If you have another strategy beyond that, that you can help us use, right? Other, to like promote the idea, like let us know, because that is what I think is the missing,
Well,
that's the missing part of it, right?
what we need is for like some other vendor to be like, we are the anti-Amazon. Our recommendation is big ball of code,
The monolith, return of the monolith.
Yeah, like meanwhile at IBM's software, have you thought about running monoliths on mainframes?
Well, that might be. I was trying to figure out like what low code actually is, and maybe the low code pitch is like, we make a big ball, but you don't ever have to see it, because I have to imagine there's a lot of like configuration and maybe even code generation, but just a whole bunch of like craziness. Like, remember when people like to obfuscate JavaScript and you tried to go look at the JavaScript and you'd be like, wow,
what is this?
Like that's got to be like what the low code thing is generating. That'd be fun.
Well, but in a way it is, right? The idea is you abstract away all the messiness and all you're left with is the business value. And so
the business
this
value.
event driven stuff is just on the continuum of low code, no code, Lambda, right? Let's get to the point where you don't think about the underlying systems. All you do is glue a bunch of stuff together. That's it at the end of the day.
I haven't worked this out yet, as I'm about to show, but I'm going to be thinking a lot. I want to create a new category called like mid code, because I feel like there's something missing there, like that you could easily go after. And I think it also would highlight how tedious high code is. I think high code is like having to worry about all the glue and integration, right? Like all that stuff. Whereas mid code is like maybe this idea of serverless.
That's
where
the sweet spot.
Yeah, you want to as always, you want to be right in the middle, not too hot and not too cold. Just do that. Now, speaking of people who've been working really hard, I don't know how much longer we have because I can go on about it. But just like the rest of the world, I've discovered this whole AI chat thing, and I think I don't think we need to worry about next year's keynote at AWS, because basically it's all over. I think you can see how just with a little bit of rigging up of stuff, we can go right into that Wall-E part of human existence.
Finally,
I think things will be fine. Get your chair and zoom around. But it is, I don't know how to summarize it. There's this AI thing you can go use freely, and at first you're like, oh, I want to ask it questions, and it'll answer it. But then I've done a lot of experimentation, maybe too much. But you can go in there. I did one earlier this evening. We were watching some movie or TV show, some premiere TV, and Kim looked over and I was chatting with it, and she was like, "Are you working or just goofing around?" And I was goofing around, so I asked it. This is like what you can do is you can ask it. I said, I read that Susan Sontag essay on camp, and I didn't really understand it. Can you explain it to me? And then it explained it to me in like 2 paragraphs, which is, searching something, but it was pretty amazing. And then I asked it to compare it to Joan Didion's writing style and like her topics and themes. So it kind of rewrote an essay with that. And then I asked it to kind of add in like, so how does that compare to Hunter Thompson? And that part was not so great. And then I said, write a few paragraphs saying that like Chuck Klosterman was heavily influenced by these 3 authors, except he talks about Nirvana too much. And like, I don't know, I think it pulled together in this case about like 40% of what you would need for a good essay there. And then, however, I also then asked it last year, Cormac had to write an essay about, what was the name of that movie? Our Day Out, which is this early 80s British play about whatever, a bunch of kids. And that one, it like totally nailed it. Like it really, like, I'll have to find this example, but it just, it was great. And then earlier this evening, I always, every year, well, most every year, I write like the blog summary of our State of Kubernetes survey. And so I just asked it to write, I think maybe a 10-paragraph analysis of the VMware State of Kubernetes 2022 survey. Mm-hmm. And it did very well. I think you could have just, that one was about 90% of what you needed. And then I asked it to compare it to the recent CNCF survey, and it kind of melded that into there as well, doing some comparing and contrasting. Now, it's obviously not brain surgery or anything good, but my theory is that this will take care of about like, I don't know, 70 to 90% of the bullshit work that office workers have to do.
Oh,
You
wow.
could just like tell it, like, my boss asked me to write a memo on an overview of plans for a holiday party. And you could be like, yeah, will you give me 5 ideas for a holiday party? And it'll pump them out. Like, you can, that's one of the best uses, is just like, give me 5 ideas for this. And I wrote another one that I had 30 minutes to write a strategy memo about why a hardware company should acquire Datadog, New Relic, or Splunk. And I gave it a few notes here about like the advantages and disadvantages. And then it wrote a pretty good strategy memo for doing that. So I don't know. I think I haven't played around with the make it program and write virtual machine stuff, because I just make slides. But I feel like if you like have some sort of problem where you don't feel like you can write something, or you don't even know a topic to write something, like I ask it to generate 12 ideas for a blog about monster truck modeling, and it sure generated them. But this will give you a head start. And then finally, for the monster truck thing, I also asked it to write a New Yorker style essay about how the decline in monster truck modeling is kind of a metaphor for the decline of civilization, and how it might have caused Brexit to happen. And the Brexit part, it didn't do very well, but it kind of figured out the rest of it.
I mean, what I've been seeing is, it can scrape a large amount of internet content to, put together something that will pass will get you to a good first edit. And for a lot of times in writing, that's the hard place to get to, is like, I just need to get some thoughts down on paper so I can start editing. And there's, with your Joan Didion examples and whatnot, there's a lot of domain expertise that someone like myself who came in, I'd be like, okay, sounds legit, right? And you'd be like, wrong, she was a contemporary of so and so, and they hated each other, and so the fine details,
the accuracy, you have to.
The accuracy is really missing. Because I've seen other places, people are like, talking about it was Hobbes versus Locke, about like theory of basis of government, and it got their arguments flipped because they're written about so often together that the AI is just like, well, obviously, Hobbes is in favor of this and Locke's in favor of that, and so. But to me, not knowing either one, I'd be like, sure, okay,
sounds good. Yeah. I think now you're making me think maybe I can ask it to explain Immanuel Kant to me, and I'll finally understand that. I could never work through that. It's very well. Difficult.
What it's going to do is scrape a lot of other people's ideas and try to put it together. And like by the time you get into some of that stuff, it's a word salad anyway. And
I think that's the interesting thing about the whole thing, though. It's like so beyond, so it's, if you think about like adoption of technology, it's cool that it's like, one, it's very tangible, anyone can touch it. So like that in itself is awesome, right? Because it's sort of like, okay, now a whole bunch of people will quickly understand what can be done. I think the next turn on it is like, okay, beyond all the things that sort of like all the ideas people kind of throw out that are sort of like the most obvious, immediate ones, like my kid can cheat on their homework or I can do this. It's like, I guess the thing that will unlock it is like, who unlocks it is like, no, this thing solves this problem like 99.99% of the time, right? And it's always right? Versus like, I don't want, like, it's fine, great, I can get a memo that's maybe 50, a good first edit. That's great. That's helpful, but it's not like life-changing, right? Like, what is the thing? And then maybe this goes hand in hand with, like, last week there was a lot of talk about, all the voice assistants are sort of dying off, like, Alexa and, Siri and all those things are not that good. It's like, is this does this change that? Does this become better there? Because otherwise it just sort of becomes like a cool technology that's novel, but like nothing really happens.
It's, already in a lot of factual reporting, that stuff's easy to get away with, like totally generating. Weather, right? Why is a human writing about the weather? You have inputs, you have outputs. There's no reason, that is all just computer models and throw some different words around it each day to say sunny. And so sports reporting is that way, where the play-by-play recap of a game, a lot of that can be generated, and there's examples of that. It's already happening, which leaves the experts, the people who can bring insight into it. Like that's why you read, like, Brandon, you're into
like
more
The
of the
Athletic
sports,
or something like that. Commentary.
the next level content. That is where
so like the
most of
AP style, just the facts, like 500
Absolutely.
to 1,000 words. Like it seems like that's really good. So, but I think Coach A, I think in your newsletter this week,
was it generated?
It's going to say quote unquote automating bullshit. Open, that was the name of. I think that was your headline. Like to me, that was like, wow, that was. It just like really started getting me thinking. Is like, okay, what would get my attention would be.
Well, you flip it on its
emails.
head, and instead of saying like, I'm going to subscribe to this feed or that feed, you're like, look, I want 250 words or less on this, and this. And your feed that you intake gets consumed that way. And then, of course, the racist bots.
When I read Coach A's newsletter, I was thinking it's like, because there's a lot about writing, of course, right? And it's like, and that's what this thing does. But I was like, what do I want? Like, what do I really want? I want like generating a 10-slide presentation on this subject, right? And I wanted to have, recommendations. I wanted to have an overview, a problem statement, benefits, and recommendations. And I want you to like pull all it together and like grab all, like, here's all the slides that we have in this company that are related to this, and like read them all, you know what I mean? Like read them all, figure it all out, and then to me, it's like, that is like, I was like, okay, now that if that existed, I'd be like, so that's something I do every day, right?
So I as you know from what I wrote up, like my other than the funness of it, my first reaction was like, oh, this is a tool for like writing, for doing stuff. And then I think like I said, I spent a lot of time, but there's 4 things also that I wrote up that I think I was testing this out with. The first one was very practical in real life, which was, as people may recall, we had to request to get my kids out of school for Thanksgiving because we live in the Netherlands. So I asked it to write it. We didn't use this, but I asked it to write a letter to the principal asking to get our kids out of school, for Thanksgiving. And it was great. I would have basically just sent it. Like, and the thing that was great about it is that the way I would have written the email wouldn't have been so nice and kind of supplicant.
I get that too.
Right. And so I realized that when it put in like, I would never write a line like this anywhere, but I know it's what you should write, which is at some point the email was like, I realize this will take some amount of consideration for you. And it just like, it would never occur to me to write that. But that's the kind of thing that like, basically when you're doing kind of like a psyops thing, or rhetoric as the ancients would call it, like you've got to like know how to like program people's politeness mind and kind of like prep them for these things to do. And it was great. And then you were going to say,
well, it's like I'm already using like Grammarly or whatever, and like
right,
starting
exactly.
to tab complete more and more as it goes.
Yeah. And so then the second one kind of, and I was going over this with my quick example of M&A stuff. Well, I went over that one. That was another example of using it as a tool. And then the next one that I used was like kind of the kind of thing you probably would dream of, Brandon, is like I had it write an email that arguing that we shouldn't do OKRs. And like it was pretty good at like pulling ideas and reasons why you couldn't do OKRs. I fed it like 2 or 3 ideas. And then I found that it wrote it way too formal. So I was like, could you write it a little more casual, right? Write it like someone's actually sending it. And I think that's an email that, it would be, I think that one was about 70% good. Like you could go in and edit it a little bit more, but it would like start a discussion about OKRs. And then the next thing that I wrote, and I'll stop, I won't get to the 4th one, but you remember the whole DevOps is dead business?
Yes.
So I thought like, let's see what happens here. So this one, I gave it a little bit more domain expertise, right? And this is where the tool aspect comes in, is I didn't just ask it to write a piece that DevOps is dead. I gave it like 3 or 5 ideas. Basically, I did what executives did for me when I worked in corporate strategy. They would just like sit there and talk for a little bit and throw out some ideas. And then I had to go actually write the thing. I was their chat AI thing. And, but I gave it some ideas and it had a pretty good piece about why DevOps is dead. And then I said, write the opposite of that, that DevOps is not dead. And it did a good job at that too. And so it's just like, I mean, and then the other thing that I did is I made 2 videos that were like little YouTube short videos. And I just like asked it like, explain how a product manager uses a backlog. And you just read that. And it was great. And I think a lot of that, as you were summarizing my thoughts on it, Brandon, is just like, oh yeah, this is a bunch of bullshit work that we kind of didn't realize we had to do. And it's sort of like, once you can automate that work, just like with your silly, bash scripts or whatever, you realize that like, oh yeah, this has been total bullshit the whole time, right? Like we don't really and instead, what it forces you to do is like do better, right? Like to actually like come up with something that's interesting and that is more novel for it. But then the problem is like you do need original material. And that's where the main limitations
and expertise and understanding the domain. I mean, this is my youngest is a he's a big sports fan. He likes all the sports but especially basketball. And so we were talking about how the classic argument of like how would modern players stack up against historical players.
Ooh.
And
you should have it right.
This kind of comes back, huh?
You should have it write that prompt. That would be great.
Well, it's been written to death, right?
That wouldn't be fair.
It's an eternal debate. But the point is, a lot of the earlier players had much better fundamentals. And I feel like this sort of tool short circuits a lot of learning. And what you'll end up with is a lot of people, and I feel this way about, so the co-pilot kind of things. It's like, as I'm trying to learn something, you kind of have to stumble through it to understand when it's making these suggestions, or else you're just blindly accepting it. And then when you get into a harder problem, back in my day is the constant refrain, but I worry that we're going to like lose out on stuff. And so we'll get to this plateau of, stuff's pretty good, but where are the breakthroughs? And
I think it needs some like sci-fi people to come in. Like, remember,
the sci-fi people are all over it. Yeah.
Well, we haven't really brought this up in a while, but like you got to throw some stuff that doesn't exist at it. Like, what would the mating rituals of space carpets be? And like see what it comes up with. But
that's why
to your point, right? Like if it would be cheating if you ask it to talk about like, do 1930s sports people, could they compete with like 2022 people? Because like you said, it's just like, that's been written. You can just do
right. But before I think like these conversations always do follow the same track. It's like, this is going to be here, no one's going to learn, and then the next thing is Skynet, right? And it's like, well, before we do all of that, like, what about like, hey, fill this PDF out for me, right? Here's a form that I got that is sort of like there's all these things I think, and you were going over a bunch of them, Cote. It's like, write an email to the school requesting this time off. Write an email to my boss and team that I will not be here, right? Create the out of office message. Like there's just like so many of the, like, I guess you got me thinking about, you've been talking a lot about developer toil, but like, I don't know. I don't have another word for it. Knowledge worker toil, where it's sort of like,
absolutely.
Like all these things that like,
I was trying to call it.
just have to like do, right? And it's like, man, I don't think anyone's like if I don't have to fill out another like medical history form or permission slip,
that would be
request. And it's like, man, like let's just get all that working. Like,
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it because so many ideas just sit in your head waiting to go to paper.
Right. And I think like I think you hit on it, Matt, right there. It's like once you know what you have to do, like actually doing the work all the time, especially when it becomes using Cote or the definition, right? It's like once it becomes like a repeatable, like boring manual thing, like writing the actual email to ask for time off is like just like pointless, whatever. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, but you're just like, it's stupid, right? You hate doing it. So it's like that's what that's what you like to do. Back to like, the human being is like, I have the idea. Now I want you to do this. And the fact that you can do it faster and maybe you even write it a little bit better than I would personally, or at least you'll, use the right language. Like, man, that would be great to have all of those things. And then it's like, for schools and stuff like that, like everything, it's like, yes, the kids and the students, like you have to prevent them using the technology till they learn it all, right? And it's like, I feel like whether it's the calculator, the computer, like we all fight this all the time now, right? Grammarly, like all of that. It's like, you have to just go in there and be like, especially my son is like, okay, we are using a pencil and a piece of paper, right? A piece of paper. And it's like, why? It's like, well, because you're not there yet. When you're there yet, you can use the cheat codes. But like, I don't think that will ever change. I think that will always be a form of education and parenting.
Yeah, I think now, we've workshopped this idea that, like, I mean, among many things, that like, if there's any situation where you sat down with your boss in a conference room and they went up to a whiteboard and drew a bunch of stuff and then asked you to send them the slides, that's what this is really good at. Like it could do that. And then I'm remembering another example, right? And again, using it as a tool, like if you demagify it, if you like give it your basic idea for something, like I did that, for example, I was simulating, like, what if I had to write one of those 360 performance reviews for someone?
Now I'm thinking I'm going to hit those things up. Yeah.
And so I'll find this for the show.
Well, I want to go one step further.
I wrote one in there, and you said it this way, Brandon, like I had the basic ideas, but it like wrote it correctly.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like it put all that effort in of just like writing it.
What if you just got to the point, like, I just want to call it like clipboard automation. It's like anytime a human being hands a clipboard with a piece of paper on it, or that metaphor, or the whole idea of like, I'm emailing you the form. Anytime that interaction happens, like there should be something in between, right? Like GPT, like fill this thing out for me, right? Like do it. And then maybe it just throws it up and like it highlights the things it didn't know, or you just give it a once over. And it's like, man, like you just think about all like TSA applications, college applications, medical. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, right? It's just like, do not have the human being sit there and manually go through and provide all of this redundant information, over and over again. Like solve that problem, and like that, I think is really interesting, right?
So I discovered there's like a developer view of this called like the playground or something, and there's a whole API you can use, and this is where you can actually pay for usage. Like I'm $9 into no, not even $9. I have like $18. I think they give that to everyone for free. So we'll see what happens. But like, I think once you can feed your own, did I use this word correctly, corpus into it? Like then what would, and this would be very difficult because it involves the IRS, but like, then it would be interesting to see if you could have it file your taxes for you. Like, and you could have like the easy, simple taxes. Like all I got was a wage and I have no family or kids, and just be like, here's my name and like my W-2, and just be like, to your point, Brandon, fill this out. And then you could do one level more where it's like, I have a 401k and an index fund. And then another level of like, I bought a house and then 5 kids, right? And like, you could keep ratcheting up. Like it's because basically like, that's what you do with an accountant is right. You actually have to do
there are things like robo advisors today, right? That kind of do stuff like that. But like, and I think maybe, to maybe tie this back to our original thing is like, here's a good example of what we were talking about before. It's like, okay, went to HEB, had to get a flu shot. They hand me a clipboard. I have to fill that information up. What you really want is like, okay, send me this link or whatever. I'll give it to like my ChatGPT, or be like, have it fill it out. They send it back to the HEB, right? That fires an event inside HEB, right? Like, okay, get all the stuff ready. Brandon's going to get it, administer the vaccine. Good. That fires an event. It goes back to my insurance. They get the billing. They update my vaccine record, right? Like that's how you want it all to be working, right? All of this manual stuff behind the scenes just works. But like, what is it? And this is back to like, kind of like, will we ever get there? Because like what happens today is like, I have to write it down. I probably write my handwriting's bad. It goes into the piece of paper. They have to then manually enter it. And then the billing does get to my insurance, but then it doesn't ever really update the medical record, or that takes much, much longer, or it almost never happens. Right. And it's like, and you're just like, wow, all of this could be so much better.
So this is why, like a few years back, Amazon looked at healthcare and was like, oh, we could fix that. Just like every software developer anywhere. They look at something and they're like,
but that's why I'm like, when I look at this,
yeah.
So when I just, but when I just look at this, I'm like, hey, like that's like, because I'm just interested in like where to apply it. Like, hey, you know what would be great? Just fill out PDFs for me. Like that would be great. Like I would want something to be like, yep. Like that would just be a great starting point or something. And maybe I'm sure there's a million other ideas, but like somebody to just grab it on and be like, no, do something. Like you said before, maybe it's the permission slip thing, Coach A. It's like, find some problem that really can be attacked by it, that can really be automated. That'll be awesome. That would, and like if someone can figure that out, it'd be great. And I think it will be exciting now that so many people have access to it, like somewhere someone's going to figure something interesting out, and hopefully it'll really save us all a lot of time.
Yeah, I think as far as nefarious usages, I don't know if nefarious, but like, there's so many I hate to call them out because it's not them, but like, we all read the paid for columns at like the News Stack, and I feel like, man, you could do a lot of those. Like you could just and again, you'd have to go in and polish it, but like it's anyways. I'm repeating myself now, but maybe what it could do is do cross-organizational meeting scheduling. It's probably, and it would be great if it had access to like all your stuff, because then it's not, because the problem with like automating meeting scheduling is you need that final human check to be like, I don't want to do that. And so like maybe what it could do is if it actually does read all of your email and like your family's email, it can like kind of start to learn that like, no, he doesn't want it. Not only does he not want to be in this meeting, but what also it would do for you is it would accept the meeting and then like an hour before send a cancellation saying that like, your kid's sick or something so that you could like get out of it. But it could,
but maybe as you're saying it, like maybe the dream then, like maybe the place to start here is just like, okay, have it integrated with your preferred email client, whatever. And it's just sort of like every time you open an email up, it's like you open the email, you read the email, and it just says suggested response. And it's already there for you, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's what, because like I think to the idea like coordinating stuff seems like too much, but just solve, like, if you will, problems unique to the individual. Like we all have email, all email requires some type of response, even if it's no response. Like fine, start there, get all of that working. That would be, to me, that would be same thing with Slack. Like, here's my suggested response, right?
Or I was also thinking this time of year, people don't do this so much anymore, but you could have it write that holiday letter that you send to everyone. Oh. That would be enjoyable. Yeah. I don't know if it'd be enjoyable, but it'd be fun to test out. Well, maybe next week we can have it write a whole episode. And go. I was thinking that would be fun to like have a show opener, written by it and see what that looks like. We'll see what happens, but it's fun stuff. People should go test it out. And like to a lot of what we're talking about here, you got to figure out how to apply the site reliability engineering idea of toil, manual repetitive tasks that can be automated that have no like business value. And I think
they have no business value. Why are you doing them?
Well, they have business value in the same sense that like, something that you automate, like I said it wrong. I forget what the exact thing is, but it's like, you got to find those things that have to happen that like you could just automate. And we should start writing those down and see if we can automate them.
I feel like we're just going to have this tab open all the time.
And then maybe the optimistic result is that collectively we'll all be like, why was I doing that in the first place? That seems kind of annoying. Like that or we'll get no reason.
Yeah, or there'll be massive layoffs if they get rid of middlemen.
Well, as long as this is still free, people could just start writing articles,
right.
articles, do some YouTube videos. That should be fun. Well,
it's just are we going to get a utopian Wall-E or not?
Yeah, that's a good. I didn't really understand why they wanted to go back to Earth in Wall-E. Things seem fine. I don't remember. Then. Yeah, I've watched that movie a lot now, more than I care to. Well, do we have any bureaucracy this episode, Brandon?
Not a ton. I think just a couple things here. One, if you have any end of year questions, so at least once a year, we'll answer questions anytime, but like certainly we'll have a end of year episode. So always good to get some questions from the listeners. If you're in the Slack, there's a whole channel. Just post your questions in the Slack, or you can just send me an email at questions@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and we'll definitely get those into the queue to be answered on this coming episode. Also, recommendation this week from Tim. He says you should check out the Stratechery interview with Ben Thompson on the Acquired podcast. So if you want to hear the story of Stratechery and Ben and get the full Acquired treatment, Tim recommends that. I actually listened to it too, so I thought it was good. So check it out if you're looking for something to listen to.
Well, there's as always conferences. Matt Ray's going to go and do some scouting this Christmas while he's in Austin, and maybe I will as well. There's that conference happening. It's going to be January 15th and 18th. I think at the Calamari. I always say it wrong, but it's some Kalahari.
That's right.
And you can, if you use the code SDT, you can get 5% off of it. Now, it seems like a great conference, very, very casual, down to earth. Lots of programming, other IT operations related stuff. It's a good one to look at. There's also the State of OpenCon in London, February 7th to 8th. Maybe I should go to that. I bet their CFP is closed. That's too bad.
We are an official media sponsor at Cote. So there you go. I can hook you up with some people maybe. Maybe they can get you in.
Send that over there. I'll check it out. And then there's Cloud Native Security Con. A very long name for a conference name, but that's okay. They were like, it's not long enough because this is North America. And that's going to be Seattle, February 1st and 2nd. And then DevOps Days, Birmingham, Alabama, April 20th and 21st. Now, also, in the third week of January, I should know the date, but in January, we're having our Spring One conference. It's all online now, so you can attend it for free. There's a huge amount of people who are going to come to it, which will be nice. You should come check it out. It's going to be basically 3 half-day like sessions, and there'll be some good keynoting, lots of stuff about Spring, as you can imagine, and all the Tanzu things. But if you go to springio.com or just spring.io, spring1.io, just search for Spring One, spring1.io. And
read the email.
Yeah. I would have a discount code, but it's free, so I don't have one. You get 100% discount.
Cote's going to pay you to go.
Yeah, no, that's not true. But but you should check that out if you go to spring1.io. Now with that, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this week?
Well, I don't know if it was the original article I read about Sriracha, but I threw that into the show notes. My pick this week is I'm a big fan of Zay Frank's Zay Frank's True Facts series on YouTube, and sponsored on Patreon or whatever. But the most recent episode on tarantulas I enjoyed very much. So always a little disjointed. It mixes education and humor, not for kids, but I loved it.
He's come up several times before, and I've never gone back and looked at him. I loved his little tiny.
I like how he's made kind of just a meandering tour of internet, fame.
He's like his own chatbot thing, except funny. Maybe that's what you can do with it is you can say to do it in the style of someone. Maybe we can do it in the style of Zay Frank, and
that's hard.
See how that works.
Yeah.
How about you, Brandon? What do you have to recommend?
Two, I guess, fairly simple things. I got this extra large mouse pad. I don't know. It's almost like a desk pad a while back. And I like it. I really like it. So this is just an Amazon basic black one. So I put the link in there. And I guess depending on how big your desk is and how big you want your mouse pad, there's a bunch of sizes. But I like it. Really like having my keyboard and my trackpad and my mouse all on the same thing. It's just gives me a nice soothing
I've got something
feeling.
Exactly like that. Yeah.
And also too, I guess it's if I'm sure everyone's on a bunch of calls. It also gives you a little nice sound dampering too. If you're on your calls and getting a little echo. So check that out. And also, I when I listened to the keynote, this Werner's keynote, I have a hard time just sitting at the computer for the full hour, especially if there isn't a lot happening, and watching it. So what I did this time was I actually just I got a new iPhone the other day, so I got the 5G on it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. So I just literally had it going on my iPhone, and I just took a walk. I just walked around for about an hour, about the length of the keynote outside. And I was like, this is the way to do this. Obviously it's a little bit, you can't see the slides, but it wasn't that important. I think a lot of the slides. So I was like, yeah, much like I like podcasts and stuff like that, like doing the dishes, taking a walk, whatever, some way to occupy the body while you're doing a keynote. So I was like, yeah, I think in the future, there's a keynote, I may just do the same thing, load it up on the iPhone and just in this case, walk around the neighborhood. I'm sure you can walk around, be at the gym or something like that, but I like to be outside. It makes it a little bit more exciting. So I don't know. That comes back to always one of those things, was I working? Was I exercising? What exactly was I doing at that point? But I found it very satisfying. So,
well, you'll
try
have
that.
I think about this a lot, and maybe I'll keep trying this. You've got to give me some coaching, Brandon, and maybe also some theory. Is I often want to do that, but I think but I'm going to want to take notes and really pay attention. But I think there's another way of looking at it is volume might be more important. Rather than paying close attention to everything, it might be more important to just hear more of this stuff.
Yeah.
because
yeah.
then to the point of our, basically you could ask the chat thing to write it for you because it's all the same stuff over and over again. So it's just the repetition and hearing things.
You're just
Well,
like the chatbot. You just
yeah, I was
immerse
gonna say
yourself
to
in
go
the
down.
content and spit out some,
Yeah, but to go down the keynote rat hole, I guess the two ways I like to watch the keynotes now are like one. I mean, I don't know if this again, like I don't even know if this is good, but like whenever, especially the AWS keynotes, like there's usually we mentioned it last week. There's a pretty vibrant thread going in software defined
Yeah.
talk Slack, which I found keeps me engaged because I'm kind of listening and then people are commenting on things they thought were interesting. So it kind of like keeps me really in tune. Whereas like if I don't like have something like going, it's like I just start to zone out, especially if it's a keynote where they're just doing a lot of like talking. And that's why I was like, oh, when I was walking, because I was sort of like, keeps your body just awake, right? I found myself listening more. So I don't know. I know in theory, right? Like especially when you watch the keynotes, there's these people just sitting in the chair, just sitting there watching. And I'm like, like a movie, of course, is different. Like it's kind of exciting, but like whenever I'm even just sitting in a conference room watching a keynote, I find it like hard to pay attention. So I don't know. These are just tricks I find to like keep it more engaging. But like I feel like some professional educator would be like, just what you said, Cote. It's like you should be watching diligently and taking notes. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. So these are maybe the next best things.
Exactly. It'd be better than nothing. Well,
that's why I'm back in my hotel room.
Exactly. My recommendation, I was taking screenshots of all this chat AI stuff, and some of them get kind of long, so I had to do a scrolling screenshot thing. And what I use for that is this of course it's on the Mac or whatever you call these things, and it's this program called CleanShot X. Now there's all sorts of screenshot capture things, but this one is the one that I use and recommend, and it has all more than just like, obviously it'll do your whole screen, it'll let you select things, but it also will let you select an area, as I was using, and then scroll it and capture that, so you can like capture a whole web page. And then it also does all sorts of things like naming schemes for saving your stuff. It'll let you do rudimentary editing, and it
Not
does
just screenshot timestamp.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll do like some rudimentary video editing. It's a good little screenshot thing if you take a lot of screenshots. And here's, to invoke him again, here's a tip that I overheard on a podcast from Merlin Mann is you should encode your file names for your screenshots with the name of the computer you took it on. And then you can kind of like disambiguate where it came from. Because I make a directory in iCloud just called screenshots, and I have all my computers dump screenshots into there. So I just always have access to them. Now, what I really need is some AI to go in there and delete the screenshots I don't need anymore. That would be handy. But who knows? Well, when you're cleaning out your screenshot directory, washing the dishes, hanging out at the gym, taking the dog on a walk, that you reflect and you think like, there's all these other people in the family. I dislike the dog the most. I would be happy if it went away. Why am I the one walking it all the time? If you don't want to think those thoughts and listen to those, what did you call them, Brandon? Those voices in your head.
Oh, the chatter, right? The internal dialogue. The chatter.
I learned that phrase, living rent free in your head. Those people living rent free in your head. You could be listening to the back episodes of this podcast, which you could find at softwaredefinedtalk.com. You should go listen to all of them. Just start at the first one and just keep going. And I recommend listening to them on 1x or 0.8 speed. Definitely don't speed them up.
Wow.
I mean, how else are you going to get to 400 hours unless you go a little slower? Because this is episode 390.
Just don't listen to the chatter in your head. Listen to us chattering in your head.
Bye. Bye.
All right. Good episode. Always it's always, we always start, it's like, I don't know, we have enough topics, then we like only talk about a few of them. It's good. That's always that's our motto. I like it.
All right, listen, I have a little after show thing here. Let me try this out. I asked the chat AI thing, can you tell me about the mating rituals of space carpets? And its answer was very unsatisfying. It says, space carpets are an imaginary species, so there's no definitive answer about their mating rituals. However, it is likely that they would mate in a similar fashion to other carpets, such as those found in terrestrial habitats. Such carpets would likely engage in courtship behavior such as chasing and rubbing against each other. When the female is ready to lay eggs, the male would release sperm to fertilize them. The eggs would then be laid in a protected area to hatch. So, not very imaginative. What's going on there? Now, I won't read this to you, but I asked it what the laws about steam cleaning for space carpets would be, and also not a very imaginative response.
Thanks, Siri.
Somehow those weren't in the training models. I just can't understand it. So
yeah. So
all right. Do we have any questions? I didn't look. I actually don't have my my glasses on. Can't really see. Do we have any good questions in the chat here? Nothing. I don't see any good.
Branch, peanut butter.
Maybe I'll just tell. Oh, I forgot to tell everyone in the chat. Like, hey, if you want stickers, just email your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Happy to send you stickers. Send us some end of your questions. It'll be good. Give us. You know what? Maybe we need to use the chat for that. It's like, what questions should we ask? What questions? Yeah, I don't know. What would I guess the prompt would be like? Send me a list of questions for the Software Defined Talk podcast. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be podcast host, right? Send me a list of questions for podcast host to answer. Like, would that be general enough?
The hosts.
It's finally, a lot of people are trying to replace creating the podcast. We're trying to replace the listeners. That's going to work. That's what we're going to do.
Man.
Maybe we'll do that. We should try to get maybe a list of a couple questions. Maybe we get that and combine it with a couple of real questions, and we can have a little game. Was it a real question, or was it a real person, or was it ChatGPT?
This obviously the corpus doesn't include all 400 hours of our episodes.
Well, we need to get it transcribed and then feed it into the system, and then
ASAP. And it should just do that, right?
And then it'll be like, Matt has not put his internal dialogue into email. I can't understand what's going on in there.
Yeah. I asked it to write a predictions piece, and it did a pretty good job at that too. That was great.
Yeah. Well, now let's just read it for the next podcast.
That will be it. Look forward to the next podcast, a dramatic reading of, or maybe we can find some voice AI to do it. It'll just be an AI reading.
You can do it in the
text
script.
From an AI.
The script has a pretty good voice reading.
There we go. Better. All right. Well, thanks for everyone who hung out today with us. We'll probably be back a couple times next week. You may see a couple streams as we kind of get some episodes recorded for the end of the year.
Yeah, we can talk about it after we drop the stream. I've got some follow-up.
All right. We'll talk to everyone next time.